An atmospheric convoy of severe storms, heavy rain, and an electric atmosphere on the way over the next couple of days, bringing all hazards from large hail to strong winds and even the threat of a tornado for many Americans. Welcome in, folks. Great to see you on this Friday now. Made it to the end of the work week and the end of the first work week of June, if you will. And I think so far, so good this month. Now, we have had very active weather. We've seen a lot of rain. We've seen tornadoes. And that's going to continue into this weekend and even into the start of next week before things should simmer down at least a little bit for some of us. I'll break all of that down for you in today's video. Now, if you haven't already, go ahead, like the video, subscribe, and hit the bell for the latest notifications. Great way to stay up to date as we continue tracking this pattern. And trust me, you'll want to hang around because we've got plenty of year left. As we start looking ahead towards the peak of hurricane season, already in that hurricane season now, but the peak of it right around the corner. Before you know it, I'm sure we'll be tracking a hurricane somewhere in the Atlantic. Alrighty, folks, let's dive on into things and start talking about what we're seeing out there right now. We're going to start with our upper level water vapor loop on this Friday. You can see we do have some pockets of active weather, but the main reason I picked this graphic to show you is because it shows the flow out there. And I want you to notice kind of how we have this general flow pattern currently over the United States. We've got this big ridge of high pressure in the upper levels, and it's just kind of parked here over the Gulf coastline, and that's bringing that flow around it in the way I have drawn on the screen. And what that's doing is basically we've gotten a lot of storms that have formed back over Colorado, New Mexico, Texas, Kansas, and Oklahoma, as we have some upper level energy supporting even supercells out that way. They get caught in this flow, they work east, eventually congeal into these big blobs of storms, as you're going to see here in just a second, and then keep on tracking east. And that's going to be the theme for this weekend. So that means the firing zone here, if you will, is basically right here in the circled area on your map. That's where we're going to see these strong storms kind of work through and around this ridge of high pressure. You can already see it quite well on our radar here as we start what I'll call the weekend on this Friday afternoon. Yeah, there's a big complex of storms. This came from the storms yesterday. Supercells are formed back here into New Mexico, Colorado, Texas, into the panhandle of Oklahoma, and even into southwestern Kansas. Overnight congealed into a blob of storms, or an MCS, and or an MCV as we call it in meteorology. This one, an MCV, that means it's a mesoscale convective vortex, meaning that this big area right here is almost like a miniature low pressure system at the surface. And that is leading to some enhanced wind shear with it. And that sometimes can bump up the tornado threat a little bit, where sometimes you get just an MCS or a system instead of a vortex. Systems are more kind of your squall lines, your QLCSs, and sometimes even a derecho, which we'll try to avoid but cannot guarantee that we'll get off scrape-free here throughout the next week or so. But that's what we're seeing again on radar. We've also got rain back up here into the northeast. You can see New York, Pennsylvania. We've got pockets of rain and storms firing up over Ohio, West Virginia. Up there could even see some strong storms today, strong straight line winds, and even a little bit of small hail, the main threat that way. But the tornado threat going to be a little bit higher again, back west where we have more wind shear going on with some of these storms. All right, let's switch on over now. Let's take a look at the pattern, break it down for you a little more in depth, and then start breaking down this severe weather region by region and day by day. All right, well, this is what I was telling you about in the upper levels. Again, it's all coming back to this ridge, and this map showing it very well. I guess where it is, right where I drew it earlier on satellite. Everything kind of lining up here, and we like it when that happens. And again, it's just the flow around this ridge of high pressure that's what's kind of steering these storms and bringing them through a lot of the same areas over and over again. As we time this out for you, again, that's this afternoon, Friday. Let's get this into tomorrow, which would be our Saturday afternoon. And you can see the ridge kind of remaining the same, but now the flow beginning to become a little bit more out of the northwest and then through the southeastern United States. Also, you'll notice kind of the elephant in the room developing here, big upper level low kind of diving down along this pathway. Now, the good news is I think this upper level low pressure eventually, as it works south, is going to kind of clear out the atmosphere a little bit of instability. And you'll notice as we time this out for you, again, this is Saturday afternoon, get into Sunday. This is Sunday afternoon, and then this is Monday afternoon. As this upper level energy dives southward, it's going to, like I said, cut off instability. So we're still going to get this sharp northwest flow, which could lead to strong to severe storms. But as that is happening, again, beating down the thunderstorm fuel a little bit further south, and that's going to change who is seeing the strong to severe storms, and kind of limiting it to areas, again, much further south by the time we get into the start of next work week. But before we get there, through this weekend, again, still that strong flow. We've got the wind shear, we've got the instability, and you can also see on our vorticity map kind of how this is going to play out through much of the area here into the southern tier of the United States. Here's this afternoon. Again, this map just shows where we have little pieces of energy, and those pieces of energy oftentimes lead to these storms firing up. So notice this afternoon, we've got one area over the Ozarks. Wow, the pin got really big there. I don't know why that happened. Sorry. We got one area here over the Ozarks. That's a little small. Let's go back to this one. There we go. Now we've got one area over the Ozarks. We've also got another piece of energy back up into the northern Rockies. And again, this is all just kind of working along this ridge axis. At least the outer edge of it, almost that ring of fire pattern you hear often about, or you hear about pretty often during the summer months. This is kind of an example of that, really, although maybe watered down a little bit. Notice what happens, though. Little pieces of energy just keep on flying around it. Here's another piece by Saturday afternoon working along it. You can see this big upper level piece of energy. That's that upper level low I was telling you about, working behind it, and eventually, again, what's likely to happen is that upper level piece of energy is going to kind of squish all of this south a little bit. But that doesn't mean we're out of the woods. Check out Sunday afternoon. Again, the ridge getting pushed south, but still pieces of energy working along it. Check out this little shortwave piece of energy into the panhandles by, that would be Sunday, and then eventually by Monday into the deep south. Again, that's what we're watching. These little piece of upper level shortwaves that could fire up storms as they continue to work along this ridge. But again, like I said, by next week, we're going to kind of push it south a little bit. But before we get there, still going to deal with plenty of severe weather chances for many of us. And again, it's not going to be gone completely by next week. Just some of us are going to get out of the danger zone, if you will, and back into some clearer weather. All right, let's switch on over now. Let's take a look at some SPC outlooks and then break down more model guidance for this severe weather pattern. All right, get ready for map overload here. This is this afternoon and this evening. And if you're thinking, all right, I must be watching Thursday's video still. Nope, this is Friday. It's just basically the exact same outlook from yesterday. Two hot spots to watch here into southwestern Kansas, southeastern Colorado, along the US 50 corridor from Ulysses, Houghton, Elkhart, back over towards Liberal, Kansas, and then up towards Lamar, and over generally towards the Colorado Springs and Pueblo area of Colorado. Then down south, Lubbock. Talk about Lubbock for a second. A heck of a tornado that worked through this area yesterday. Luckily, kind of lifted right before it got into the city. Still had strong winds and hail in Lubbock proper, but back up towards Clovis and kind of points in between Clovis and Lubbock. Had a pretty insane big wedge dusty tornado on the ground. Luckily, looked to mostly go through rural farmland, and it was a dusty one. I can tell you, just a tangent here. I was out storm chasing this exact area a week ago, and yeah, these storms get quite dusty at this time of year as they really start to pull up some of that fertilizer and topsoil, and the storm just turns the color of dust. It's almost like you're going back in time and experiencing the Dust Bowl is really what it feels like sometimes out there. But another day of the same story out there today. And guess what? Yeah, that severe threat all along that northern axis of this ridge, Tulsa, Little Rock, Memphis, Nashville up towards Louisville, then even another little area up here into the northeast could see severe weather today. Now let's break it down threat by threat. Tornado threat, not really going to be a problem east of the Mississippi. Yeah, Memphis, Nashville, Bowling Green, Louisville, Evansville in that 2%. Not a huge deal. I really do think the biggest tornado threat today is right where the SPC has it, in that brown 5% risk of a tornado within a 25-mile radius. Pueblo, Liberal, Lamar, back down through really the entire panhandle of Texas and Oklahoma. That's where we're going to need to watch today for that potential of a couple tornadoes. Very similar to yesterday, so I'd be shocked if we don't get at least a couple of them today out here. Again, hopefully they stay over rural areas like they mostly did yesterday, but takes one storm to change someone's life, so make sure that you are prepared. Wind threat today, anybody shaded in on the original map could see strong winds today. And as for the hail threat, the highest threat again going to be into the plains, and we could even see significant hail. This is what's kind of driving that enhanced risk as well. So we're talking baseballs, softballs, plus possible here in that hatched area on the map from Pueblo all the way back down towards Lubbock. What about tomorrow? Guess what? More of the same, but we're going to shift it east a little bit. Some of those upper level pieces of energy working along that ridge now going to shift east to the Mississippi. So higher in chance of severe storms tomorrow. The entire Carolinas, all of Tennessee, all of Arkansas, and really most of Mississippi, Alabama, Georgia, going to be in that threat area. Dallas, Fort Worth in it tomorrow. And we'll zoom it out a little bit here. The threats for tomorrow, the tornado threat, a good bit lower tomorrow than yesterday and today, but still cannot rule out a brief spin up anywhere in the green. And really, I would say you can't rule it out anywhere that's shaded in on the original map, but just a slightly higher chance here. Nashville, back over towards Little Rock through the Ozarks, Dallas, Fort Worth, the Red River Valley, maybe even Huntsville, Birmingham could see a quick spin up. I don't think tomorrow's going to be a big deal with tornadoes. Wind, though, could be the bigger threat. Strong straight line winds, as well as the potential of some large hail here with any of these storms that get going for your Saturday. Let's get it into Sunday. We're not done yet. Now, Sunday, again, going to kind of see two areas of severe weather, a bit of a bimodal threat, although, again, connected in a sense here. But the leftover piece of energy from Saturday could cause problems into the coastal Carolinas by Sunday, even down into southern Georgia, and even towards the Dothan and Auburn area of Alabama. And then a new upper-level piece of energy on Sunday once again kicks up the threat back into the southern plains, Texas, Oklahoma, back over towards the Ozarks by Sunday afternoon. And take a deep breath, because guess what? Monday, we're not done. Another area of severe weather. Notice, though, by Monday, how this begins to shift south a little bit. I think that will be a theme here. But Pine Bluff, Shreveport, Monroe, Baton Rouge, Jackson, Meridian, Birmingham, Tuscaloosa, Montgomery, Columbus, Mobile. I can name every city in Mississippi and Alabama here, but you get the point. Another little upper-level piece of spin. Going to fire up some storms for our Monday afternoon here into the heart of the Deep South. And then I think after that, we'll see what's next, but should begin to wind down a little bit here. Not going to be done with severe weather, but we should get at least a little bit of a break from just days and days and days of the same folks getting in on that severe weather action. All right, now let's take a look at more models. Let's break this down a little bit more in the upper levels, then take a look at the surface, and we'll get you going here into the start of the weekend. All right, this is a map I've shown for really the past couple of days. It's upper level, or I say upper level, it's surface to mid-level wind shear, or bulk shear as we call it in meteorology. And again, just to quickly explain it to you, the brighter the colors and the higher the numbers, generally over about 40, 50 knots, that's when supercells become more probable. If you get more of a 20 to 40 knot wind shear or bulk shear here, that's more of a multi-cell kind of environment. So let's time it out. This is this afternoon. Again, notice most of the wind shear back here into Colorado, Kansas, Oklahoma, the panhandle of Texas, even portions of New Mexico there. And guess what? That's where we have the highest chance of tornadoes. So that makes sense. We'll move this into tomorrow. Some of this tries to push east a little bit. This is by Saturday afternoon. Again, most of us still seeing the bulk shear over Arkansas into portions of Missouri, Oklahoma, but beginning to see enough wind shear that multi-cells and maybe an isolated supercell could even get into the Carolinas. That's going to make sense with the tornado forecast, right? We looked at tomorrow. It doesn't really get past the Mississippi much, and that aligns quite well with the Europeans' model's projection, of wind shear. So again, you can kind of see what tools the Storm Prediction Center are using as well. Get this into the weekend. Here's Sunday afternoon. And notice wind shear calming down a little bit. Still have some left over, though, into Texas and Oklahoma. So I think Sunday could see a higher end tornado threat out that way. And then you notice here comes that next big piece of energy swinging on south. And you're thinking, all right, well, maybe that'll spike up severe weather some. You can even see here by Monday, it does the same thing, pushes south. But that's not the only thing you need. You also need instability. So this afternoon, notice that axis of instability pretty far south. It stays that way here for our Saturday. This is Saturday afternoon. Again, everyone south of the Ohio River, generally speaking, has enough storm fuel to support severe weather. Let's move this on into Sunday. Here Sunday afternoon, we got a lot of instability and a lot of wind shear back into Texas and Oklahoma as you kind of think about the last map and then this one. So we'll need to watch that. Again, that could be a pretty big day of severe weather there into the Red River Valley on Sunday of Texas and Oklahoma. But notice plenty of storm fuel even into the Carolinas, less wind shear, so maybe more of a downburst potential, maybe some large hail. But the tornado threat, I think, really going to confine itself to the plains, at least in the highest sense. Not to say we won't get a quick tornado or two east of the Mississippi, but just Texas, Oklahoma, New Mexico, Colorado, Kansas. Those are the states that really need to be on higher end alert for tornadoes with this sort of pattern. Get it into Monday. And again, like I said, Monday, still some instability, but notice how it gets squished down towards the Gulf Coast a little bit as that northern piece of energy works on through. So we may have a ton of wind shear over Nebraska on Monday, but if we don't have any storm fuel, it doesn't really matter all that much. And you can see it kind of stays that way for a little bit, gets squished down south, And then potentially by about a week or so from now, we could see a return in the flow of instability back up into the Great Plains. And maybe that once again fires off more severe storms there, even into the high plains. It is June after all, so you would expect the Dakotas and Nebraska to start getting in on the action a little bit more. All right, now let's talk about mesoscale models, break it down for you a little bit more, and then we'll be done, and you can get on your way. All right, latest high-resolution rapid refresh model for today and into tomorrow. We're going to start in the southern plains, then we're going to zoom out and show you everyone else. But again, the tornado threat higher out here, so I figured we should zoom in a little bit and talk about it. All right, so notice by this evening, storms firing up. And again, the thing is, notice how they're kind of discrete. Notice how we go from nothing to just a couple of these discrete storms. Colorado, Oklahoma, even eventually into Kansas, down towards Texas, even through extreme eastern New Mexico. I've got my eyes on you for tornado potential today. Cannot rule it out. Then by the evening, much like yesterday, these are going to congeal into more of a complex of storms. Again, a couple supercells left over. Check this one out in southern Kansas. That could be a nasty storm there late into the overnight into really the early morning hours of tomorrow potentially. But eventually, again, we're waking up tomorrow. All of these have congealed into a mesoscale convective complex or maybe even a vortex. Generally speaking, on this model, looks more like a complex than anything else. So we'll watch that. We're going to start with a tornado threat and a large hail threat. Then this congeals into what we call a wind bag, or basically just a big old line of wind and rain and some lightning. And the tornado threat, it comes down considerably, not zero, but comes down. And throughout the day tomorrow, this just keeps on working through. And then by tomorrow afternoon, notice we start to lose some of that lift we had. So I think tomorrow is going to be a much nicer day out here. Cannot rule out an isolated severe storm. Here could fire up into the southern plains. But generally speaking, today, overnight, and into tomorrow morning is the time frame to watch through this area. And I'll zoom it out, look at the east in general this afternoon. Again, storms up into the northeast. We got a bit of a front working on through. Strong winds going to be the main threat, some lightning, and cannot rule out some small hail as well. But tornado threat pretty low with those storms. Out that way, you can see here's our southeast storm that caused a lot of rain into the Carolinas yesterday. Myrtle Beach got absolutely washed out for the starting night of CCMF. That's pulling on out of here as well. And you can see by tomorrow afternoon, all this energy comes out of the plains. Here's your Saturday. Again, notice these complex of storms working on through. I'll tell you straight up here, the models do really bad at simulating these sorts of things. So you see at 5 p.m. tomorrow, we got a big storm complex in Mississippi and Alabama. I'll be completely real with you. That could very much be in the Carolinas for all I know and for all anybody knows. The models just really struggle with how these things evolve, and how today's storms go affects how tomorrow's storms will go. And it's kind of a domino effect with these summer-like patterns. So just know if you're anywhere in the threat zone for tomorrow, just assume you have a chance at strong storms. Not everyone will see them, but you will have a chance if you're in any of those outlined areas I showed you earlier today. Again, wind going to be the main threat, some large hail, and an isolated brief spin of tornado, the usual 3 that we talk about this time of year. And you can see just, it's these rounds continuing to work on through and through and through. This is by Sunday morning. Switch over to the GFS now so we keep on going ahead into time. Again, the GFS showing the same thing, even by Sunday, just complexes of storms kind of working on through here. Also going to likely see some rain with that front, with that upper level low working on through. Less severe weather chance with that. Could be gusty winds, but maybe even a little bit of hail. But tornado threat should be pretty low there. As again, we're just really lacking any sort of instability. And you can see that kind of keeps on coming through. But here's Sunday. I told you about Sunday. I think Texas and Oklahoma, watch out. I'm already seeing a lot of overlapping ingredients here. Texas Panhandle, Red River, Western Oklahoma, maybe Southern Kansas, potentially even Southeastern Colorado, and Eastern New Mexico. I think Sunday could be the next big day for you. You get a break on Saturday. Watch out for Sunday. We could do it all again, similar to yesterday and today. Looks pretty similar that way. And then eventually, again, it's going to congeal into a complex of storms, work east, and eventually could even get to the deep south by Monday or Tuesday. And you can see next week just kind of some unsettled weather down by the Gulf, but we begin to dry out and become nicer into the Ohio Valley by about next Tuesday or Wednesday's time frame. All right, let's go ahead, switch on over, talk about the final things. That'll be rainfall totals and temperatures throughout the next week. Well, how much rain can you expect from this pattern? Well, it's obviously going to depend where you're at, but that corridor, again, along that ridge axis, going to see the most of the rain over the next 5 days or so pictured here. So Oklahoma, Arkansas, the Red River, back into Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama. through the Tennessee River Valley, yeah, pretty good amount of rain. We're talking 2 to 4 inches for a lot of folks. And then also up into the Northeast, where we've got this front kind of stalling out a little bit. Could see a couple rounds of showers and storms over the next couple of days, leading to, again, maybe 2 to 3 plus inches of rainfall. A couple places could see flooding out of this, especially into Oklahoma and Texas, where I think we're going to see heavier rainfall rates over a shorter amount of time. That could definitely lead to a flooding concern. But generally speaking, again, a pretty rainy pattern for most folks, kind of shaded in those darker areas. Now, it won't be a washout for anybody, but you get multiple days of heavy thunderstorms. That'll definitely add up here in the rainfall department. What about temperatures? Well, check out tomorrow. This is tomorrow afternoon temperature anomalies. The red above average, the blue below average. Kind of a mixed bag again for a lot of us. Some of us kind of in those cooler temperatures, some in those warmer temperatures. Notice though, by the time we get to next week, that pocket of cold air, that upper level low from the north dives down. And check out next Tuesday afternoon. We're below average for most of us east of the Mississippi. And going to make it feel not like spring per se, but a little less like summer as we get into the second week of June. It won't last forever, though. Eventually, that will get on out of here, and we're likely going to see, rebound in temperatures in the 7 to 10 day range. Alrighty, folks, that's all I've got for you on this Friday. Again, hopefully you enjoyed it. If you did, like the video, subscribe, and hit the bell for the latest notifications. Y'all have a great one, and I'll see you all tomorrow.